What's up guys, OFSREagle here bringing you a brand new video today. Today I am bringing you the first in a number of videos, kind of just letting out all the content and things I had under wraps for following the end of the HCS Halo 5 lifecycle. So this is something that I took a lot of time to invest in and work on, and it was only really kept for private lessons. You'll see here that it's going to be very interesting with how this is. Now, I came into the Halo 5 life cycle very late, and this is something that I knew would be beneficial to me, and so when I started teaching lessons, I actually taught students that had never played Halo 5 before, so this was very beneficial for them. But seeing that this is so far into Halo 5's life cycle, it's not as relevant now, but it is something that I do find very interesting. If you're new to a first-person shooter, or specifically Halo, one of the biggest things that can be very hard to learn is proper reticle placement, where to expect a enemy to come from. And that's something that I encountered while teaching my lessons, is my students didn't know, they didn't have the experience of where to anticipate an enemy. They didn't know the spawns very well, they didn't know high traffic areas. It takes a long time to become familiar with it. It takes a lot of experience and a lot of just playing the game to really become aware of that. Watching pro players is something we would do, and you would see that every time a pro player would, or even a really good player would turn the corner, they'd always line up their reticle to where the enemy's head would most likely be. It's not 100% accurate, but the issue is that my students didn't know where to anticipate that. People like me or people like you who have played this game for over 2 years have developed that, and you'll see, if you were to look at when you first started playing till now, you'll see a pretty steady increasing curve of accurate assumption, right? And you'll become more accurate with your prediction more frequently over time. Well, for someone just starting out, they didn't, we're trying to expedite their learning process. So what I made is something that I did kind of independent of myself. I came up with the idea by watching football, of all things. I realized, Halo 5 doesn't have a lot of intricate training regimens besides skill jump maps and Octagon. And then watching football players, they have so many drills. Basketball players, same thing. So they have, if these real life sports have a lot of drills to help them get better in one specific area, Halo 5 should have that as well. And something I never saw before, so I'm excited to share it with you guys. And my own personal creation is Reticle Maps. You'll see littered and spread throughout the entire map are these little white boxes, okay? And at first glance, they may seem really a lot and overwhelming, but the whole design of this is for you to walk around the map, and your goal is to, as you walk around the corner, have your reticle lined up on that box. And you know if you're accurate or not because when you shoot it, there's an audio indicator. This little mechanic is something that I got inspiration from, I believe it's called Shooting Gallery or something. And so I kind of went to Forge, deconstructed it, and then placed it to my own needs. I didn't want just destructible targets, especially for someone just learning. They need to be able to see where an enemy will most likely come from. So as you walk around, you'll see they aren't placed in every possible location, but the most likely. So as you're coming around the corner, you'll see that just by habit, my reticle moves pretty in a initially random motion, but what it's actually for, which you guys probably know, is I'm anticipating where an enemy will most likely be. So when it's mainly for having the first shot in a gunfight, you always want to be prepared to have first shot against an enemy, and the way you do that is by having your reticle placed where they're most likely going to be, and you'll be able to shoot them quicker than if you were looking in the wrong area or looking on the ground and then have to move up. This is what this drill's in. It isn't really for skill jumps or anything. It's really just to move around, and as you see them come into your field of view, that's where you want to look. Now, there, like you see, there's a lot littered in here. That's because there are certain sight lines that are really important. For example, this right here, This little indicator here is mainly to be used for over here, right? So you know, as you come around this, you know that there's often, if you played Halo 5 a lot, especially in Plaza, this is a huge sight line for someone with sniper at nest. So this is something to be aware of, all right? Now, as you just by walking around, you'll kind of realize where you need to look. And you don't need to shoot every single one. You can do it just to make sure you're being accurate. But as you see, as things come into view, you then have an awareness of where to look. Okay? So as you can see, that's something there. Now this is here. I can really go ahead and break down every single little spot and what it's for. But just by walking around, if you have a lot of experience, you'll notice that they're just kind of there and nothing really changes for you. But if you've ever struggled, if you're, let's say, a newer player or someone who still struggles with proper reticle placement, this is the map. Now, I've done this for Kali, the Rig, and Truth, as well as Plaza. I don't think I'm going to continue with any more. They take a lot of time. I had to manually go in and place each one. I had to fabricate a prefab to make this work. And I measure this to the proper head level as well. So you see this one's placed really low, and that is because very often when you're sitting glass with sniper, you can anticipate someone to clamber right here. So that is what that is used for. So you can just go around and see that there are certain angles that you want to be in anticipation of and always be looking at. And so if you've ever struggled with anything like that, this is the map for you. Now, it won't tell you exactly where they will be, but it's just as these things become visible to you, you want to work on making sure that your reticle is lined up when they come into your field of vision. You don't want to be walking along here with your reticle here. You want to have it in these more likely places. Now we're actually going to switch to a different map so I can showcase that one as well. So as you can see for Truth, it's the same thing. Now Truth is a little bit easier and a little bit more redundant because this is a symmetrical map, but nonetheless it still applies. And the whole reason I did this because while teaching my students, this is something that always came up was proper reticle placement, and even though I try to make them aware of it, it was something they can't learn overnight. So I wanted to find something that they could practice on their own time that would instill good habits, because they can go into quick plays and games all they want, but if they don't have something that's actually correcting them in real time about where to look, it's not going to establish good habits and good muscle memory. This is what this is for. So as you can see, it's a lot more evident in Truth, it's because it's circular, where to look. If I just move around, I'm trying not to even think about where these indicators are, you'll see that they pretty much line up with where enemies are most likely to be when you cross that line of sight. So I place these purely based on my personal experience and also watching some pro play, but mainly it's where 9 times out of 10 where I often encounter someone when I cross the line of sight. Also where I often find my own muscle memory to gravitate to. So there are a lot of spots that may seem redundant. For example, over here at car, or even P2, there's a few here that seem kind of why is there just here and 4 in here when there's never 4 enemies in P2? Why are there 4 indicators? Well, because often you'll find that, especially if you capture the flag, you're going to have this sight line here to worry about a lot. So a lot of times my students would often let's say they just spawn and push out, they aren't being aware of this sight line here. So this is to help with that. But also when they're pushing from back of the base, you want to be able to not only look at this one, but when you round the corner up to P2, this is something that you always have to anticipate, is someone rounding up the opposite side as well. So that's what that is placed there for. And then you'll also notice that these right here are really important because a lot of times I see my students as they push up, they turn too late to face top mid. And often someone is behind a bubble getting their shields back, and then they see that, and if the person going up the P ramp doesn't look in time, they can get shot up. So that's what this is in place for, is to really highlight where some danger areas are, where some basically all the dangerous sight lines. Now, again, it can be overwhelming at first glance, but just by walking around and just trying to, as you see one, snap your reticle to it. And over time, if you do this daily, little bit every day, you will actually develop good muscle memory to snap to. Now, it may not be right. It may not be 100% accurate. So let's say you round here, all right, and you look here, no one comes up, and then you look over here, then an enemy may spawn over here and come to that spot right there. Now, that's something that I noticed, like when watching Saiyan, he would continually do this until he was either right and correctly predicted someone, started landing shots, or he was starting to get shot from the back and had to address a gunfight. Or the third option was he was incorrect with his prediction and had to then adjust. This isn't perfect science, but it really helps take out the guessing work of someone who's new or still trying to figure out proper reticle placement. So you can see, as you could just go through, there's a lot of things you can work on and become aware of. It may also highlight things you maybe weren't too aware of before. This is something that I always do a lot, is I tend to sit here with green gun and kind of anticipate someone just spawning, pushing out this way. So this makes you aware of these sight lines. Let's go to the next map. So Kali, being a symmetrical map, still has, again, kind of a redundancy to it, but nevertheless, it's still very important when learning the sight lines. Now, because it is so much bigger, there's a lot I could have placed in many areas that I didn't. Because Coliseum is so big, there's still only 8 people that are on the map, 4 on each side. So, and this is something else that I also catered this to 4v4, not free-for-all. Free-for-all was a little bit different of a meta, but I catered this to 4v4. So you'll see, like, just off of spawn, like, we'll go off of, let's say, snipe spawn, okay? Now, when it's snipe spawn and it's started the game, you really don't have to worry about these ones. But the main thing that I want to point out is this right here. This is a big area that a lot of people don't anticipate. Maybe they'll anticipate here or something like that. But this is really to showcase how many areas you can get shot from just from coming up snipe ramp. So this will tell you that it's more profitable for you to hug one side or the other, not stay in the middle. Because here, if you push up this, so guess what? You're able to get shot from this side and this side as well as middle. So by hugging one side or the other, you now remove a sight line from either side, and so it's up to your discretion. So that's what this is kind of designed for. You grow through, you can see different ones. So even like these top S4 ones, I see that a lot when I'm pushing off spawn to elbow side, and I can look up here and I often see that. You have the windows, yeah, and then these here are often when someone's trying to wait out for rockets. This is another sight line that's very common. So you'll see just moving around, like, again, that's what this is, just for you to move around, and as you turn, to have your reticles placed in the right areas, okay? Now, there's a lot I could place throughout, but this is what I kind of decided on. And now you'll see for here, I only kind of favored one side over the other. That's mainly because this isn't perfectly symmetrical. If you'll notice, I don't do one here, because very often, there's nothing to really hide from except S4. All right. Now rockets, there's way more of a sight line towards elbow than there is from cave. So very often people hug this side rather than the right side, or either or. They hug when going into window. They don't hug this side as much because they have to worry about elbow. Okay. They really don't have anything to worry except S4. And you can still see that from this side as well. So just by default, people choose this because they can not only see S4, but they don't have to worry about elbow until about this point. But if they do that here, they're going to have to worry about elbow and rocks, and then also worry about S4. So that's something that I just noticed and kind of catered on my own. So yeah, so we have all these kind of sprinkled throughout, and again, the whole idea is just to go through and just work on just making sure that as you round a corner, your sight lines are lined up where they should be. It doesn't need to be perfect every time, but you definitely don't want to be like looking down at the ground when going into cave. You want to, a big thing with pro players is that they have a really good muscle memory with lining up for a headshot, but like they just have an instinct about it, and that this is what this drills. Okay, so let's say you're encountering someone and have a gunfight over here, right? You can have a muscle memory of knowing where the head level is. See that? If you aren't familiar with it, you may look too low, may look too high, and you may be down a shot and lose the gunfight. So this is what this drills, is making sure that when you come into a sight line, you're at proper head level. So for the rig, with it not being a symmetrical map, there are a lot more unique sight lines to be aware of, so I'm just going to highlight a few. So for example, let's see, so starting over here, just a lot of tower ones, especially the halls are really important, long haul, stuff like that. Rounding at nest. Now there's a lot I could place at nest, but again, I had to, I could have gotten carried away, so I just wanted to keep it down to the most likely ones. And then once you line it up there, then you can make an adjustment. Again, these are all lined up to proper head level if they're standing. Some of them, if they're crouching, like for, I'm pretty sure there's one of these where it's lined up if they're crouching, because more often than not, they're in a crouch position in this spot. I think that was here. Oh, that's head level. I forgot which one, but so yeah. So just going through, you'll see like, okay, peeking yellow corner. You'll know like kind of what to look for. And so also another thing that this also teaches you is how to snap from one to the other quickly. So if he's not here, you're prioritizing this because this is the first in your sight line, and then you go to the next one because that's the next likelihood, and you're also not exposed to that until this point. And then as you come through, see what I did? Like I don't quite remember where I placed these, but it's just the muscle memory that's instilled in me from the amount of time practice. So that this is what this is supposed to train. Okay. Now I know rounding this corner, someone could be around here, especially with scatter. So that's something that I want to be aware of. And now often I don't go through basement unless it's like strongholds or something. But looking through here, you know where to kind of keep your reticle, and then you come up, and now you know where to anticipate an enemy. Now this isn't, like I said, 100% accurate, but it should help take the guesswork out of learning proper reticle placement. Now, I am going to admit, I feel like this is a little bit too late into the life cycle of Halo 5. I mean, it's kind of the truth of the matter, but you know what? That's why I wanted... I didn't start teaching lessons till about a year ago, and by that time, the need wasn't as big, so hopefully when Halo Infinite comes out, I'm very excited to bring this stuff over to that. These tools that I have. I also toyed with the idea of having like a grenade map. So basically painting little indicators on the wall, like actual like painted onto the texture, to show where to throw nades. That's something that sometimes my students have a hard time figuring out. Is like, where do I throw a nade if, let's say, they're here or something like that. So that's something like that I would do here, so people don't often think of that, or they don't quite know where to throw it. There's some guesswork. It takes a lot of practice. So if they can practice with an X, or something on the wall, when they go into a game, that muscle memory is already established. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. This is something that I took a lot of time and effort to go through, and I know it's probably not too useful at this stage in the game, but you know what? Better late than never, and I'm excited to share it with you guys, and hopefully you guys enjoyed. And now I'm leaving the links for the Halo Waypoint download link to bookmark it in the description. They are searchable, so you should be able to just follow the link, sign into your Microsoft account, and go from there. And it should everything should work. So hopefully you guys enjoyed, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video. Peace.